What is going on, you guys? We are back one last time for this WrestleMania weekend wrap up. This is DerekJ Speaks, here to give you my review for WWE Monday Night Raw on April 20th, 2026. Happy 420 to all of you out there who celebrate this holiday and maybe celebrating it right now as you listen to this review. But we are here to talk about the post WrestleMania episode of Monday Night Raw. And for post Mania Raw shows, this one was very weak. For a regular episode of Raw, it was all right. It was actually very newsworthy in many ways, with a lot of new faces appearing on the show, some returning, some brand new. They laid the groundwork for some new stories coming out of WrestleMania and going forward. We may have gotten an announcement of the main event of the next pay-per-view for Backlash for the World Heavyweight Championship. So we got some newsworthy things, but there's just a certain energy that used to be there for those post-Mania Raw shows with those really raucous crowds and all kinds of surprises and craziness all around. We had something similar to that last year. That show after WrestleMania 41 last year was actually really, really good and probably the best episode of Raw all year, or at least one of them. So this one, I mean, maybe it's one of the best shows of the year, but that doesn't really speak too highly of the year we've had so far. So this was a very standard edition. But again, some big things did happen, like what we got at the end of the show, where after waiting all night, Roman Reigns finally graced us all with his presence. He rolled up in his big SUV. He walked all through the backstage area. He met up with his cousins in the gorilla position, and they all came out together. The brand new World Heavyweight Champion, Roman Reigns, comes out. They go to commercial. They come back. All three men are in the ring now, Roman and Jimmy and Jay. So Roman's here, and he directs his attention over to the Usos and talks about how he misses this. He misses the three of them working together and being together as a unit. And he talks about how the three of them together are stronger, and how the last time they were together, look at the proof, look at the evidence, the last time they were all together on the same page, working in tandem, they ran the industry. They ran the company for 4 years on top. And so now Roman wants them to work with him again, not as his servants, not being subservient to him, as his underlings, but basically as his equals, as his family, just standing by his side. That is what he wants. And Jimmy kind of answered it, threw up the ones and whatnot, but we didn't get a full concrete answer on that, nor did we get a concrete answer on someone else's challenge, basically, which this segment was interrupted by Jacob Fatu. Now, all night we've had different people talking about championships. We had CM Punk on the show. We had a backstage segment with Gunther and LA Knight, both men declaring their intentions for the championship. Of course, we saw Obafemi on the show, and he's a big name to be in that championship picture somewhere down the line. And so, much to my surprise, at the end of this show, we had an appearance from SmackDown's Jacob Fatu. He came out. He didn't want to acknowledge Roman. He is here for that championship. He said he does not want it. He needs it. And he wants to win that championship. Not to be the tribal chief, but he wants all the things that the tribal chief does have. The cars and the shoes and the big house and just a better life provided for his family. And he says he wants to get that and get that championship and provide that for him and his family at any cost, even if that means going through Roman. And he proceeded to challenge him to a match at Backlash. And Roman didn't give him a yes, but he also didn't give him a no. He basically told Jacob, are you prepared to handle the burden of this championship if you win it? Or are you also ready to handle the burden of if you lose and you have to acknowledge me. And he gave Jacob a week. So he said next week he'll give him a proper answer, and that's kind of where they left it. He called him little cousin, so he technically little brothered him, but in this case he little cousined him, and that's where they left things. And in the aisleway, he was talking to Jimmy Uso, talking about, hey, go check on your boy, basically, because Jimmy Uso and Jacob Fatu have formed a partnership on TV in recent months on SmackDown. So that's where we leave it. And obviously, nothing was set in stone here, but it looks like we are likely to see Jacob Fatu being the first challenger for Roman Reigns in that World Heavyweight Championship. Honestly, the biggest shocker of the entire night was what came in this segment, not Jacob coming out, but the fact that Roman basically said that he's going to be on the show next week. So that's huge. That means 3 straight TV shows of Roman Reigns on TV. He did say in the post-Mania post-show that he's going to be around. He said no more of that part-time crap. He said we're going to see him all summer. I don't know what that means, but I did say, if he's going to be champion, I hope to see him around a little more regularly. And at least right now, he will be. But I have no problem with them going with Jacob Fatu and Roman Reigns. It's a big match to do for the championship. It could be something saved for SummerSlam. It could be a WrestleMania match, be on a bigger stage like that. But you can't just save all of those matches for those shows. You got to have some big matches here and there. And running with Jacob for this, it makes sense. Jacob did win at WrestleMania. Of course, he is a SmackDown star. So does this mean Jacob has been transferred and traded over to Raw and he's going to now be a permanent fixture on the Monday Night brand? Not necessarily. We have seen these inter-promotional championship matches in the past outside of just a Money in the Bank or a Chamber win or a Rumble win. Those are usually the reasons for that. But we have seen this precedent before. Once upon a time, Randy Orton, as a SmackDown guy, came over to Raw to challenge Gunther for the World Heavyweight Championship at the Bash in Berlin PLE a couple years ago. And he faced off with Gunther. They feuded on Raw for a few weeks, and then Randy lost that match, and he went right back to SmackDown, and they never really brought it up again. So this could be a situation like that. Should we look deeper into what Roman was talking about with Jacob acknowledging him? Is it going to be a situation where if Jacob loses, he has to fall in line with the bloodline and just be a background player with the Usos? Even though Roman just said how he doesn't want the Usos to be in that kind of spot. He wants them to all basically be equals. So that doesn't really line up there. But yeah, I could see this, being a big championship match for the PLE. I'm not 100% sure whether Cody is going to wrestle on that show or not. We did see Cody on this show in a segment with CM Punk. So he was there, but we still don't know what is up with his health, if he's cleared to compete. There were reports going around that he's in concussion protocol, so there's a very good chance he might not even wrestle at Backlash. That show's in 3 weeks as of this recording. So, without Cody on that show, they might look to something like Roman and Jacob as a big championship main event for that show, which it is, and I have no issues with that. Even when Jacob loses, which he will. Not that I love the idea of seeing Jacob Fatu get beaten on a PLE, but I look at it more bigger picture here in that Jacob is in a position where he gets to feud with Roman Reigns on TV. They get to spar back and forth in promo battles. He gets to be in the main event of a show with Roman, and they get to have a big time match. And even in defeat, so long as they still make him look strong and they make it look like a very evenly matched fight, it should be fine. And even if Jacob tucks his tail and goes right back to SmackDown and feuds with somebody else, that's okay. Hell, for all I know, Drew McIntyre might show up and screw him out of the championship match, and they resume their feud. You look at what happened at WrestleMania, and you would think that was the blow-off, but maybe not. Maybe that was the start of something, and they might, lead to a cage match or something like that. Something similar to what happened with Drew and Damian Priest last year. So I don't know. But there's multiple ways they can go with that. But just on the surface, Roman versus Jacob Fatu at Backlash, that's clearly the direction they're going in. Unless this was a complete twist and we're going somewhere different when these two go face-to-face next week. It looks like this is the match, and I have no issues with it. It's a fresh matchup. It's someone Roman has not wrestled on TV yet. Jacob being in a championship match is exactly where he belongs. A lot of talk about people like Obafemi and Trick Williams and Braun Breaker and all that. You got to include Jacob Fatu in there as someone who can be built up as a top star in the company. And he is someone who I would like to see have world championship gold around his waist at some point down the line, or just be in the main event picture, regularly. So I got no issues with that. Now, the question of someone like Gunther and someone like Obafemi, two men who also got big wins at WrestleMania, and two men whose names were circulating online as potential challengers for Roman Reigns in the coming months. I mentioned this in my review of WrestleMania Night 2, and if you didn't listen to that, go back and listen to it. I mentioned how both men could easily be eventual challengers for Roman. Now, why not go with Oba right now, capitalize on that victory over Brock Lesnar? He basically retired Brock Lesnar. That's not really the narrative they told on the show. The narrative they really enforced at the open of the show. Oba came out, fans are going crazy for him. He puts the mic to his mouth. He says the ruler has arrived. Mic drop. Fans still pop crazy for him. They're doing the dance. They're going nuts for the guy. And he leaves. He poses and then he leaves, and that's it. So Oba is hot as hell right now. And one could question whether or not it would have been smarter to position Oba as a challenger for Roman and have him immediately beat Roman for that championship right now. You could have done that. That would have been an interesting direction to go in. But to basically not contradict, but continue on to the point that I made earlier about how you don't have to always save the big matches for the bigger shows like a WrestleMania and SummerSlam and whatnot. You can do some of these B shows and have big matches on them to make them feel a little more special. At least try to make them feel special. I would say that a match like Roman and Oba right now is one of those big matches that you do save for a bigger show. The two of them, not face to face, but they had separate segments on that post-Mania scrum, and they called each other out. Oba called out Roman. Roman responded when he was on the show later. And they basically implied that, let's get through the summer and we'll see where we're at. To me, that felt like they're setting up a SummerSlam match. And maybe that's a match that they build up and save for that show. And I think that's perfectly fine. Now the question becomes, what do you do with Obafemi in the meantime? Because there's not a whole lot of talent on that roster for him to work with. And you got to keep him looking strong. You can't just take him off TV or have him just twiddling his thumbs. This man just decimated and decisively beat Brock Lesnar. And after that match, Brock Lesnar hung up the boots and walked out. They basically, Michael Cole on the show confirmed that it is a legitimate retirement from Brock Lesnar. So they could still have him come out of retirement later on, but the way that went down at WrestleMania and the way that they were treating him on this show, they gave him a nice little tribute video package, all that stuff. I don't see Brock coming back at least anytime soon. So you got to capitalize on that momentum for Oba. I am in favor of them building to the eventual championship match with him and Roman. That could be a huge match to do for a show like SummerSlam. But also, you gotta give Oba something to do on TV. I wouldn't necessarily put him in a feud with Gunther immediately. Plus, it looks like Gunther is about to feud with LA Knight. Like I mentioned, the two of them were in a backstage interview. Gunther was getting interviewed backstage, got interrupted by Knight, and they both declared their intentions for wanting to go after the championship. And it looks like they're going to cross paths at some point. Could possibly be a Backlash match. I don't know. But that could be something that we see in the future. So neither one of those men are someone for Oba to face. CM Punk was on the show, and he had a segment of his own, and he talked about how he's not going anywhere. He's not taking a vacation. He's going to be around, and he's going to find his way back to a championship match at some point. Although, with how that segment went, it looked like they were setting something completely different up for CM Punk in terms of championships. But could Punk be someone for Oba to work with? I don't know. But if they're not going to do the Oba match soon, then they hopefully will give him something good to do and keep him strong and keep him relevant on the show and keep him in a good spot, because that's too good to waste. But I mentioned CM Punk because that was another big thing on this show. They set things up for the immediate future with Jacob and Roman, but they also set things up seemingly for things in the farther distant future. We had CM Punk on the show licking his wounds coming out of WrestleMania. He talked about all the personal losses that he has had within the WWE family. A lot of the names that were embroidered on his jacket the previous night were names of people who have passed away, people close to him. And he mentioned how he has suffered a lot of losses and how the crowd has been there as an anchor for him, and they're going to still be there with him now. So that was kind of what the main gist of his promo was. And then we had an appearance by Cody Rhodes, the WWE champion, who came out in shades, took him off, exposed that black eye. It looks a little bit better. It doesn't look nearly as bad as the online photos were looking the night of. And he was walking with a limp. He looked like a broken man here. But he came out and he talked about how he was expecting a crash out from CM Punk, and how it's weird for him because he's coming out here and he feels like he looks like a loser, and Punk has a much different reaction. And Punk was putting praise on Cody and how it was hard for him to have to get through a match with someone who he loved and respected, a mentor, a friend, and all that. So it's rough for Cody right now. But the main point of the promo was how Punk was talking about how he's going to, come back and he'll find his way to a championship again, whatever way that comes. I'm paraphrasing here. I'm not going word for word, but basically saying any opportunity for a championship that may come up in the future, he will grab it. And all the while he's looking down at Cody's WWE championship. And the crowd's going crazy for this. And as Punk leaves, Cody stops him, or Punk's in the aisleway, and Cody yells back at Punk that, anytime you want it, you got it. And to me, that's not setting up something for Backlash, not even really setting up anything for SummerSlam. That felt like that's setting the groundwork for a championship match at WrestleMania 43 next year in Saudi. So I could be wrong. They could do that match at SummerSlam. I don't expect it within the coming weeks because Randy Orton still has unfinished business with Cody Rhodes. And if Cody's going to wrestle at Backlash, I don't see any reason why it would not be against Randy Orton. Maybe Punk should go to SmackDown with how they kind of decimated the SmackDown roster, or at least they took some people from SmackDown. And again, not fully, because I still don't think that Jacob is permanently leaving SmackDown. But if we are to believe Jacob is gone from the show, he's gone. They lost the Street Profits. They don't have people like some new call-ups like Ethan Page, and now apparently Joe Hendry, who's going to be on the show next week in a concert. So they might have lost out on some talent there. But hey, they have Rhea Ripley now and Royce Keys, so they're not completely lost. Also, Sol Ruka was on the show, and she might be on Raw going forward. So, yeah, it's not looking good for SmackDown. A show that already struggles with the talent they have. You take away some other big names from that show, that 3-hour show, and it's not looking good. So, don't have a whole lot of high hopes for that show. We'll see what they do, but I don't have high expectations. But anyway, with Cody and Punk here, I do think that this was setting up something for WrestleMania next year. Another possible tease for WrestleMania next year or a future show, we had Rhea Ripley on this show, the new WWE Women's Champion. She is heading to SmackDown, but on her last night on Raw, I guess, she teamed up with Io Sky one last time to beat the Kabuki Warriors. So, hey, we got Io versus Asuka in Vegas this weekend after all. Look at that. But later on in the night, they parted ways backstage, and as Rhea's walking off, we see Liv Morgan, who already appeared on the show earlier. She's sitting on a crate with her championship, and she makes a comment at Rhea, and the two kind of stare each other down a little bit, and Rhea walks off into the distance with Liv glaring back at her. So, I mean, obviously the two of them have history. Now they're both champions. Could that be setting up a future championship match to rekindle that rivalry? Could it be setting up something for later this year at Crown Jewel if they do that champion versus champion thing again and both women are still champion at that point? Maybe they could fight there. I don't know. But that looked like another tease for something in the future. But I mentioned Liv Morgan. She did appear on the show. She was celebrating her title win with the rest of the Judgment Day until she was interrupted by Sol Ruka, who came out and got in Liv's face. She was congratulating her, but she also said that she was not going to back down from a fight. This brought out Adam Pearce to make the match official, and these two went on to have a really good match. Way better than the match that Liv Morgan and Stephanie Vaquer had at WrestleMania Night 1, which is very sad because this TV match should not be better than the match at WrestleMania just a few days earlier. But it was. And the crowd was going crazy for Sol Ruka. They popped huge for her when she came out. They were popping for a lot of her big moves. She had a really cool counter to the Oblivion in this match. So a nice showing for her, although she did not win because unfortunately, while the referee was attending to a fallen Liv in the ring, she was distracted, and on the floor, Sol got taken out by Zarya, who put a beat down on her. And as the referee turned back around, Zarya was gone, starts the count. I thought they were going to do a count-out finish here, but instead Sol barely made it back in to break the count, but she immediately got hit with a proper Oblivion and got beat. So Liv beats Sol. I don't have an issue with it. They put some heat on the continuing rivalry between Sol Ruka and Zarya in NXT. They're going to have a blow-off to their feud, I presume, on NXT tomorrow night, as of this recording, in a last woman standing match. I'm sure that's going to finish that off. I could see Zarya winning that because she doesn't really win a whole lot anyway. But if Sol is coming up to the main roster, I could see Zarya getting the win there and, establishing her. Maybe even establishing herself as a future challenger for Lola Vice in that NXT Women's Championship. So, but yeah, good to see Sol on the main roster. Much like people like Oba and Trick and Javon Evans and Braun Breaker, Jacob Fatu, a lot of these names that people are talking about as being the future of the company, don't sleep on someone like Sol Ruka. She could be a huge star in that women's division. She already felt like a star on this show with a lot of the moves that she was doing out there and the way the crowd was reacting to her and all of her really flashy, cool moves. She's going to be a huge star. So they got something special on their hands with someone like her. So we'll see if she will officially make it to the main roster very soon. Elsewhere on the show, we also had another new face in Ethan Page. He popped up in a backstage segment with Javon Evans and Adam Pearce, and the match was made for later in the night, Pearce versus Evans. They had a match. It was a regular standard TV match that was won by Ethan Page due to interference from Rusev, who is still pissed off about that OG cutter off the ladder at WrestleMania the night before. So after the match, he attacks Javon. This brought out Penta, who made the save. He was getting the better of Rusev until Ethan Page came back around and tripped up Penta on the top turnbuckle. And then Penta got laid out by Rusev. Rusev stood tall with the championship. Ethan Page backed away. So this could be something in the future. Maybe a fatal four-way match for Backlash for the IC title. Maybe Ethan Page is the man to eventually beat Penta for that championship. I don't know if it would happen sooner or that would be something they would do later on, but I could easily see that. And Ethan Page on the main roster is really cool. I expected him to appear on SmackDown, but him on Raw is fine. His whole gimmick, his whole presentation really fits on the main roster. It was fine in NXT, but he's a really good fit. He's a natural fit for the main roster. So I expect some good things for him in the future. As we go through the list, I mentioned the Judgment Day. We also had another appearance from the Judgment Day later on as Finn Balor had a match with JD McDonough. The match wasn't too long. They made it a little stiff. They were fighting in the crowd for a little bit. Balor got a busted nose, but in the end, I mean, it went the way you expected. Coup de grace, and Balor got the win. After the match, Dominic ran out to attack him, but Finn fought him off. JD saved Dom from eating another coup de grace, so the heels backed away and Balor stood tall. I guess there's a possibility this could continue. I don't really have an appetite to see it continue. We already saw the Demon beat Dominic at WrestleMania. Like, that's it. But, you know, they got TV time to kill, so maybe this is not completely over just yet. We also had an appearance from Paul Heyman and The Vision. Logan Paul and Austin Theory, the tag team champions, they were on the show here. Paul Heyman was talking. He was very pissed off with the WWE production crew because they still had Brock Lesnar in the opening signature at the start of the show with the whole then, now, forever together part. They still had Brock in the now section, and that pissed off Paul Heyman. He's talking about how they need to change him over to the forever section since he's now gone and retired. Then he passed the mic over to Logan Paul, who got some crazy heat, and he was talking about how pissed off he was about iShow Speed and all these outsiders and YouTubers coming in to try to infiltrate the business. You know, very meta from Logan Paul, obviously. But Paul Heyman brought out Braun Breaker, who of course played a big role in Seth's loss to Gunther at WrestleMania on night one. Braun Breaker came out and gloated about, you know, cutting Seth in half with a spear and talked about how every time he sees him, he's going to attack him. He's going to make his life miserable. This, of course, brought out Seth Rollins, who came in from behind with a chair, blasted Breaker in the back with it. He quickly got overwhelmed by Theory and Logan Paul until the Street Profits ran out and made their big return to TV. They have been gone for many, many months, and the SmackDown Tag Team division has suffered greatly for it. But now that division will suffer even more greatly because the Street Profits are now on Monday Night Raw. And they showed up here, they fought off Logan Paul and Austin Theory, obviously setting up a tag team championship match at some point down the line. We all know it's not going to be on a PLE, but I'm sure that'll be a match on Raw at some point in the future, and we'll get an endless merry-go-round of singles matches, Montez Ford versus Logan Paul, which could be a really good match, or Angelo Dawkins versus Austin Theory, which does not sound exciting at all, and all the combinations that they usually do because that's how WWE likes to build up tag team matches. But then it came down to Breaker and Rollins here, and Breaker got the better of Rollins, cut him down with a spear, was talking shit to his face, and then gave him another spear and stood tall over him. And this was the obvious direction coming out of WrestleMania. They didn't do the singles match of Mania because of Breaker's very late game status there, but he is cleared now, and they can power through with this feud. And I'm sure this will be a match for Backlash. And if not, it'll be one for Clash in Italy, and they'll probably run it through a good 2 or 3 PLEs in the future. So, and that's really about it on this show. Like I said, a lot of things happened. I mentioned the Brock tribute. There was a tribute for him on the show, but yeah, that was really all the noteworthy aspects of this show. Like I said, it was a fine show for any regular episode of Raw. It was pretty good. Not a whole lot of great in-ring action, but you got some pretty decent promos. You got some things that sets up some big matches for the future. We set up the likely main event for Backlash with Roman and Jacob Fatu. They teased something even bigger down the line with CM Punk and Cody Rhodes. I forgot to mention, after Liv's match, she got confronted by Stephanie Vaquer, so those two might not be done with each other. We could be heading towards a rematch between the two of them for that championship. They introduced Sol Ruca. They introduced Ethan Page. They announced that Joe Hendry is going to be on the show next week with a concert. They brought the Street Profits back. So a lot of stuff. Some exclusions. Becky wasn't on the show. They're going to have Becky come back next week. They had Paige with Brie and Nikki Bella in the crowd, but no promo from Paige. The same woman who has been gone from TV in this company for several years was not cleared to wrestle. All of a sudden she's back and she's cleared, and on her first night she wins a championship. You would think they'd allow some promo time for her, but no such luck. Maybe we'll see that on SmackDown this week. I don't know, but nothing on this show. But what we did get was pretty decent. I wasn't bored with the show. I wasn't overly excited about the show. And like I mentioned earlier, that certain element of spontaneity and just high energy and really great atmosphere that was once there with those post-Mania Raw shows just ain't there anymore. And it might never come back in full the way it once was. So we're left with what is, and this is it. And this is it in terms of this review. I am pooped. I've been talking about WWE way too much, but we're finally done here. I will not be covering SmackDown this upcoming week. Unless something huge happens on that show and I'm able to do so. Otherwise, I will not be talking about that show. Very likely the next time I will be on video talking about something wrestling related will coincidentally be WWE again. Backlash is in about 2 or 3 weeks from now, so I'll be talking about that show. After that, a few weeks after that, we will see AEW, Double or Nothing. A lot of big things happened in the world of AEW this past week. Of course, Darby Allin squashed MJF to win the AEW World Championship. And I have full expectation that MJF is going to win that championship right back at Double or Nothing in New York. So they tried to shake things up a little bit. Very polarizing move. And I'm sure a lot of other people have provided much discourse about that, and I don't really care to get into it. So we'll talk about that when we get to it at the end of the month of May. But yeah, this is about it for me. Thank you guys for listening in with all this WrestleMania coverage this weekend. Really appreciate you taking time out of your day to tune in and listen to me talk about and ramble about wrestling. And this is it. WrestleMania is now in the books. It's over. Not a great WrestleMania in full this year, but hey, at least we had a tremendous main event with Roman Reigns and CM Punk. One of my favorite matches of the year so far. And I imagine it'll still be very high on my list as we get to December later this year when I run that countdown. But until next time, love you guys. Appreciate you guys. Take care.